So thank you very much for the survey today. If I get a chance, I'm going to update and edit this video, but in a much shorter form with a focus on a single issue and anything that might be affecting it and some additional information. But here is the unedited version, and in the email there are all the recommendations and actions. I've used AI to do it, just makes it quicker and also more accurate. Less is dropped through, and I quickly read through it to check that it all makes sense. But I will double check before sending the final version. Note, I do the data loggers when I send off the final version. So thank you very much, and have a listen. It's all the way down there. So outside we're seeing a chimney breast just at that point, and there's the neighbour side, so I will see if they are in. So these damp marks are not from ingress, otherwise you'd have brown staining. They're from hygroscopic salts. And it was because the chimney breast has been removed at some stage, and the calcium nitrate, which is a type of salt that's associated with burning of coal, has been released into the plaster. The simplest thing to do, the two simple things, either way you need to block it, is to use thermal lining paper, and I would use one with Celotex with plasterboard, or use Zinsser cover stain. You'll need at least 2 coats of it. It's an oil-based primer. 2 coats of it, and then you'll be able to paint whatever. But you want to do at least a 300mm overlap. So if that's the center, it's a bit like an iceberg. That's the center, but you'll find that the salts are going to be all the way around, and potentially even more than that. But you start with 300mm, it should be enough, and then you can paint it. But I would be tempted to put in thermal insulating plasterboard, or actually any insulation, so long as you've got a gap, which you would do, because that's what insulation does. It uses air as an insulator. Say that they're benign. They're not a source of moisture. They're just salts in the brickwork that are attracting vapour from the air, and they're in dynamic equilibrium. So that means that they're evaporating as quickly as they're condensing. They act just like common table salt. In Italy, where they have high humidity, they will put rice in with the salt to stop it from clumping up. Salt has a specific relative humidity of 75%, so that means that at normal room temperature, if it goes above 75% relative humidity, salt will do the same thing, just common table salt. But calcium nitrate does it at 50% relative humidity, and that's what I think you have here. That is what you have here, should I say. We're obviously next to the bathroom here. You've got an extractor fan there, which is actually some distance from the shower. You want to just make sure you keep the shower door closed. You don't want to get excess vapour causing condensation. Chimney and roof looks okay. Not fantastic, but okay. So the extractor fan isn't working. That's obviously an issue as well. I mean, it is possible, but I don't think so. That's just standard condensation. The reason I don't think it is for two reasons. It's not specifically of the cold zone, so that is not the coldest zone, nor is necessarily that. It's also an old chimney breast, and this is a very common problem with chimney breasts. On video, and the great thing is that I can chat away and so these dribble marks here.
We don't know. We can't think of anything that would have.
So I'm pretty sure I know what the problem is, and I've already spoken to the video about it.
Okay.
But you also don't have any ventilation in the bathroom. The extractor fan isn't working,
Right.
and that needs to be fixed as a matter of course. But what I believe you have are what are called hygroscopic salts, and they are released when you remove chimney breasts, and it looks to me as though your original chimney breast has either been removed or it's been plastered over, but the chimney runs in the centre.
Think of that, yeah.
And
Do you need to see the other side, by the way?
I wouldn't mind knocking on your neighbour's side.
That's fine as long as we go for basically now.
Okay, let's go now then. Interested to see your neighbours have had 2 sets of damp proofing treatment. It's very strange.
You're talking.
Let's have a look in here.
No, stop following me.
I mean, it's dry.
You can see there's no damp.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
It looks like hygroscopic salts, and hygroscopic salts are typified by, so the most common one is calcium nitrate, which causes what's called deliquescence. It's a type of condensation which takes place at low levels of relative humidity. So specifically for calcium nitrate, it's 50% relative humidity. Do you see these, the damp in the summertime as well as winter?
I think so, yeah.
Well, that's what you use. So it's not penetrating damp. That means it's not rainwater that's coming through the chimney breast or through the roof, because you would see brown staining if it were.
Right.
And you're not, and it's, you know, bring the colour from the timber and the brick. So that's the important thing.
Yeah.
Deliquescence and condensation look pretty much identical, and I wouldn't.
Deliquescence.
I believe it's deliquescence, which is a form of condensation.
Okay.
But you obviously have a ventilation issue as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if these marks here that you're seeing here are coming from condensation.
Really?
And I would guess that you've got poor insulation here, and the bathroom probably is not vented. That's a really important thing to deal with.
Just fix that.
Yeah, replace it. I would.
Yeah.
And I'll also say that sometimes when people put fans in, they don't duct them out properly. Yeah, well, I'll have a look. Yeah, that's not a really sensible way. But the rule of thumb is you've got to keep the internal dew point, which is a measure of the amount of vapour in air. It's also the temperature where condensation takes place. Right? You want to keep that always below the outside temperature by improving ventilation and or dehumidification. And they're quite easy to do. So it's obviously heavily full of dust.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not working, so it'll need replacing. But there is a duct there.
It's positive. This doesn't just go into the...
It's just that a lot of builders take shortcuts, as you can probably imagine. Can I actually see this? Yeah, well, yeah, you can do. You can get you can get white smoke. Make pellets. For me, first of all, I'd replace that. And secondly, I would talk to whoever's going to do it, possibly an electrician, about the possibility of putting a a vent tile immediately out there, but they may be unwilling to do that. And then the second thing is you can just get, they're very inexpensive, you can get them on Amazon, smoke pellet. The only thing is the smoke will go everywhere, so just make sure that this is closed and have it just blowing in through there and just see where it comes out. Or actually you could do it with, you could do it with a cigarette actually quite effectively, but anything would that smokes. But as I say, these are from hygroscopic salts. They cause deliquescence, which is a type of condensation. They are not a source of moisture, so they're not like a leak from the roof or anything like that. If they were, you would get some brown staining. You would also expect to see a similar sort of dampness on the other side. And it's very patchy. It's quite common to have it on chimney breasts. In the summertime, somewhere around a third of my surveys are from hygroscopic salts. You get it at the base of walls, you get it on up chimney breasts.
Is that similar to things, so we've got some exposed brick downstairs and white powder appears?
No, that's different. Those are calcium sulfate salts, which come from, the historic name for calcium sulfate is gypsum, which is the name of plaster nowadays, and because it's mainly with that. So when plaster becomes damp, the salts will move to the surface like salts in a salt pan. No, these are different. You don't really ever see them in salt form. I imagine if you really dry them out, you might do, but they're in the brickwork, they're in the plaster. They come out when you replaster a wall. And then water
sticks to them. That's why.
And then water is attracted. It's drawn in. It's
from the room.
From the room, but it's in dynamic equilibrium. So it's not constantly, like with condensation. Once it's formed, you can have a drip and it can pool and so on. But because it's happening at around 50% relative humidity, you don't get that concentration. It will just remain on the wall. Occasionally I've seen, like in the summertime when it's really humid during a heat wave, I can see it sort of appearing to cry with tears of water running down the wall. Anyway, the solution is twofold or threefold. Either ignore it, or maybe more than that. Or you can put in thermal insulation, which is not a bad way of dealing with it. So like PIR or any form of insulation, so long as you've got a gap between the wall and the new wall and the new plaster wall and the old wall. So PIR would work well.
So that's the void.
That's the void. Yeah. So and then the simplest way of doing it is using Zinsser cover stain, which is an oil-based primer. So you can paint on top of it, and you need to have at least 2 coats of that, and you need to have at least a 300mm gap. So these are it's like an iceberg where you're just seeing the tip of it, but actually the salts are much deeper within the wall. Right. And so you want to do a really good overlap, and it might even be worth doing a good section of the wall just to make sure you're well overlapped, and then paint on top of it. Okay. It's not something that you need a specialist for. It's fine to do it. Then you can use
just put that on top.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. Great.
So you can use types of lining paper. So thermal lining paper would work. Wool rock thermal lining paper will work. Or you can use silverback lining paper, or plastic lining paper, plastic wallpaper lining paper. So those are all the solutions.
Brilliant.
So not a big problem. It's at the moment, because it's warm. But I would say if it gets cold next door, and maybe you don't heat it much, I don't know. But I imagine this is just plasterboard, so you get a lot of heat loss here. And you've got vulnerability to condensation. You've got you're next to the bathroom. Okay, even if you don't use it, it's still there.
Use the sink.
You've got, and you know, we humans all respire, and the vapour that comes out of our mouths just collects with
It's
all
get
the.
more humid in the night on the.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's also colder at night. But the other thing is that vapour rises, so hence why clouds are above ground. Vapour rises, H2O is lighter than O2, and therefore the vapour from the rest of the house will tend to rise up here. So I see you've got the windows open, but you don't have trickle vents on these windows. So, you know, it's wise to just have a little bit of window at night, every night, just to get a bit of ventilation. Or use, or monitor with the data loggers, make sure the vapour, the dew point is kept below the outside temperature, and you can use dehumidifiers as well. So the relative humidity is useful, but it's only telling you relative to air's ability to hold moisture. But if the temperature of the wall gets below 12.46, you'll get condensation. So at night, when the temperature drops to 10 degrees centigrade, if everything was closed up and sealed, and you got the same amount of vapour in here to now as you have at night, then you'll get condensation. But that's not what I think is causing that those are hygroscopic salts. Say that the hygroscopic salts are triggered by something. So they're either triggered by the plaster, new plaster, perhaps before you bought, you don't necessarily know, but they can be triggered by condensation itself.
Right.
So this wouldn't have been habitable originally. So necessarily this wall would have been replastered. I know, or maybe it would have been a loft room, because you always have that. But whether it would have been plastered or whether it was just you wouldn't necessarily have plastered. Or it might have been, I don't know. But it would have been a loft room because you've got the windows to the front. Those aren't an addition, are they? They're original.
It was all new plaster and stuff, definitely.
Oh, was it? Oh, it will release the.
I think it was 3 flats before.
As you probably know, these houses were built with what's called a subfloor void, and suspended timber floor, and your subfloor has been blocked up and a cellar area made out of it, and really, ideally, properties should be kept as close to the original as possible, and water will naturally percolate, rainwater will naturally percolate through what would have been a brick wall here, but it's got a barrier now, which is, it's quite understandable why people do it. It makes it much more habitable, but at the same time you're pushing water elsewhere, and I don't see any signs of it causing you problems. But presumably, have you got visibility of the subfloor? Can you see it through the cupboard over there, for instance?
No.
My place, which is where I start,
Yeah.
I would run the dehumidifier 24/7, and
out the wall.
I would be tempted to put just a little gap into the sump pump and run the drain straight into the sump pump, unless you go anywhere else. If you
Why have I not thought of that? That we can go out there into a drain.
okay, you can do, but then you can raise it up here. You can raise it up here and then do it that way. Yeah, why not?
That's where the washing machine is. The washing machine at least has some force to it.
But then you would have to have it higher up, which is fine. You can just build a little cupboard. But I would do that rather than put heating in, because you don't need heat here.
Yeah, feels like a waste.
But all the energy, all the heat from the dehumidifier will come out as, all the energy will come out as heat, so you'll get a little bit of extra heat. It's not a particularly big one though. Can't really talk to washing machines specifically, but where you've got mould, it's because you've got high humidity, and you probably have high humidity here. It's worth putting one of the data loggers in here and just seeing what sort of humidity levels you're getting.
That tells you.
I know, but it's only very approximate, and also it's affected by the heat that it's creating itself. So But yeah,
And what's high? Above 50?
well, mold will grow above 85% relative humidity, but you always have to remember that there's a temperature difference between where the hygrometer is and the cold wall, or maybe in the washing machine. And also, you're going to have water around here that's just coming from the washing machine. So, but I think you're doing the right thing. Holding it open. So this has got a hollow sound,
Yes.
which means that there is a subfloor area. There's a hollow area, void underneath.
It's only about this big. I have seen actually when we did the building work.
It's a suspended timber floor,
Yeah.
and most of the time there's no problem. You don't have to worry at all about it, and there's no reason for me to be concerned. But 2 properties I've been to this week have had rot in the subfloor to the extent that the floor has dropped by like an inch in both cases, or no, one was less. But if you get rot in the subfloor, so the most common type is what's called cellar rot. You can get wood weevil with it. It's most properties will have some element of it, some degree, but it's when you come to sell, you know, it could flag up as an issue. But the killer is dry rot, and it's quite uncommon. But when you get it, it can be very expensive to remediate. And I'm going to have a look.
Rip up the floors, have a look.
Well, sometimes it's more, it's as disruptive to find out that as it is to remediate. But no, not quite. But you know, the risk is low, and it's normally caused by a leak. That's the most common cause, which I don't think you've got. When you've got whites on the brick like that, these calcium sulfate salts, they're coming from the cement. They're very common in any property, but particularly modern properties, because there's higher concentration of cement in mortar. And if you look around the streets of London, you go and see any new build like this, you'll see white salts in them. They're benign. They don't do anything. They're not, you know, they're characteristic of the wall. Okay. But if you wanted to wipe them away,
because of the leak in the wall.
No. But if you wanted to sandpaper them away or whatever, but you could just test out a little bit and just see. But you know, to me, they're part of the character of the wall.
There's a downpipe in the wall cavity.
Okay.
Here, which has always made me think,
well, it would affect the distribution of heat and therefore the profile of evaporation. But you can see it.
This is the worst part, probably.
Yeah.
That's not.
Well, I mean, it's very common to see it about a metre below the top, and that's because the water comes down from the rain and then evaporates out. Now that's just perfectly natural, nothing to worry about. But you also see it at the bottom of the walls, so. And that again is because the water is bouncing off the bottom. This is when you have a look at it outside. Inside, you know, it's just the way it's just evaporating. And as I say, these are calcium sulfate salts. They're the same as you use for plaster and mortar. And this would have originally been the end of the house, and you would have had subfloor ventilation here. And you would have subfloor ventilation over there and over there, and all of that has been removed. So you've got reduced airflow, so you've got increased risk of water not being evaporated out from the subfloor. So you've got a theoretical increase of risk of rot. And they talk about putting ventilation out. I don't actually think it makes a huge amount of difference.
We've got it on the other end still.
You should have through ventilation, but a tube all the way along, it's a bit like breathing in and out through a snorkel. You know, you get ventilation, but it's not like not having a snorkel there. What I would recommend is monitoring the subfloor. I'll have a look to see if there's an obvious place, but you can always do it through the cellar, probably. You know, every so often have a look. It will change over time. So a subfloor void, if it's got good airflow will have a similar humidity to the outside. So if it's raining, it will go up. Rain is 100% relative humidity. It won't go as high as that because it's a bit warmer, but it will go up. But what you can look for is, so if it goes up but then doesn't come down again, that's possibly because there's rot. There's a good chance it's because it's rot and or there's a leak. One way or the other, you want to know about it.
Mm-hmm. Up to what sort of numbers are you talking?
Well, so I ran one myself, and it's suddenly one day it shot up to 99%, and it turned out that there was a leak on the toilet, and so obviously I fixed it immediately. But yeah, you'll see it suddenly spike. It's the sort of thing you might want to do like once a week or once a month.
65, you're thinking that's a normal number?
It is, but I think it's going to go down. It comes to equilibrium. It's just, I only just put it in there. So there is a very simple calculation that you can make to find out what the dew point is in the subfloor. And the dew point in the subfloor should be similar to the outside. It could be slightly higher, but not much higher. And what you do is you take 100 minus whatever the humidity is showing, which for sake of argument, it's 65, it's actually 66. So that's 45. And then you divide that by 5. So that comes to 9. So you take 9 off the temperature. So that gives a dew point of 11. Okay. And if the dew point shouldn't be much higher than the outside, because
that's the temperature, the outside dew point.
No, the dew point shouldn't be much higher than the outside dew point, but certainly below the outside temperature. I'll look on the outside, but my instincts say it's probably internal. So what you've got here is some staining, which comes from the plasterer's beading. I'm also seeing a bit of dampness up there, but on the whole, it's colourless. Seems to be relatively. Can actually be the beading itself, because there is this. I use the surface version. When gutters overflow and leak, they can cause penetrating damp, but that's water that's coming the whole way through the building material, and generally you'll get a staining. But what they can also do is they can cause localized dampness on the external brick, which causes heat loss, which increases the risk of condensation. So it's not classed as penetrating damp. See, at the moment it's dry, and the only bit that's showing high is just here, which is, and it's very localized to this, which is probably just caused by the metalwork itself rather than any damp. So this is a surface damp meter, and it's showing it's dry. Are you okay for me to do this? Yeah, so that's dry. So I think this is essentially historic, probably when somebody was actually staying here. And I would say it's almost certainly the external guttering, as you say, probably splashing onto the wall, causing heat loss, increasing the risk of condensation rather than ongoing penetrating damp. But I'll have a look on the outside and see what I can see. Yeah, but it's not pooling where the damp issues. Oh yeah. Oh well. Yeah. So I think that's the issue. I mean, it's relatively easy to deal with. It's obviously dropped down there. It's lower there. It's a bit of a it's lower there where the silt's built up. Otherwise the silt wouldn't have built up. It's a bit like a camel, I think. It's got lots of humps on it. So subfloor ventilation is important, and this is being blocked up by trees or plants. So you really should open that up. And you're not getting good subfloor ventilation. Imagine there's one underneath here.
I think I know the other one as well.
Oh, there. Okay, yeah, there you go. So you probably just have that 1, 2, 3, and then. So there's no subfloor ventilation here on the side. But so long as you're monitoring, and if it suddenly peaks, so subfloor ventilation is a belt and braces in case water goes into the subfloor and it goes unnoticed. But generally, you don't need to have ventilation unless you get high vapour levels in the subfloor. The high vapour can come from a leak, or it can come from percolating water. But anyway, monitoring to see what happens.